I'm Justin Miller, admin and editor of the NASCAR Moonshine Racing League and driver of the number 9 Napa Auto Parts Chevrolet for the Moonshine Racing League as well. This is the first episode in a series of driver spotlights where we'll be featuring different drivers for the NASCAR Moonshine Racing League and their perspective going into the second season as we attempt to expand and grow the league. It is my pleasure to welcome in a longtime friend and colleague and teammate of mine, Chris Matakanski, driver of the number 12 Menards Ford Fusion for Speed Demon Racing. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing great, thank you.
All right, Chris. Got a series of questions for all the guys. Got some different ones specifically for you. First thing I'd like to start off with, going back to last season. Obviously, you're the Xfinity champion, which congrats to you on that as well.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on last season and what it took to win the Xfinity championship, and what will it take for you to retain that championship going into this season?
Well, last year was a bit of a difficult year at the start of it all, getting to know each driver, the way that they drive. Of course, you make some rivalries along the ways, but to work through it, and it turned out to be a very successful and victorious season, thankfully.
Right.
As far as going into season 2, same mindset as I did last year, going in maximizing points as much as I possibly can. Sure, a win would be nice, maybe a couple, maybe 3.
Right.
But I'll definitely, with my mindset is definitely on maximizing points, as it always is. Stage wins, good finishes, etc.
Well, that brings me to my next question. I'm glad you brought that up. So you brought up your focus as far as the championship goes. So are you more focused on pointing your way into the champ? Obviously, wins and stages are important with the new point system that me and John have come up with. What's your biggest focus as far as this year, and are you changing anything focus-wise that you would do differently this year that you didn't do last year?
Yes, beating Toyota. Most definitely. No, my mindset going into this is wins is top notch. I was happy with the third place finish in points and cup, but essentially you're there for a championship, and that's my goal.
Okay. And then with being the Xfinity Series champion, the first ever Xfinity Series champion in the NASCAR Moonshine Racing League, no one else could take that title away from you for the rest of our time in this league. So being the Xfinity Series champion, the first one that we have, do you kind of shift focus to the other 2 championships out there, since you already have an Xfinity championship, ultimately the goal being to win at least one in all 3 series?
Absolutely. I would like to get at least one win in trucks. I have not gotten one yet, and that is my goal. If the championship ends up at the end of the yellow brick road, then I'd be more than happy to embrace that with open arms. My main focus this year is on Cup. I will be doing a lot of testing, and hopefully we come out on top.
Well, that's a good perspective, Chris. And speaking of perspectives, this is the first season that I can think of. We've been together, you and I. Most of the viewers and fans out there don't know this, that we've been teammates and friends for going on almost 4 years now, 3 years at least. And this will be the first season we're not on the same team. And I want to get your thoughts on the new team setup that we have with 4 drivers to a team, and the new teammates that you have, and me and you still working together, obviously being the 9 and the 12, but being on different teams.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to working with a new team. Unfortunately, excluding you of being a part of that, but in my heart and in my mind, you're always a teammate, regardless of what label we have. I'm really excited. I like the new format. I say bring it on, baby, because I'm ready.
Alrighty. All right, Chris. So with this, the new team and the new perspective that you have with the championships, when you look at the schedule, what tracks stand out to you as tracks that you feel like you can go to and you can win? And then on the flip side, the second part of that question, after you hit those tracks, what tracks do you feel like you got to go to and you really got to kind of buckle down and practice during the week to get a good finish because you struggle at?
Well, positive side, as far as the tracks that I'm strong at, I really enjoy Auto Club. I really enjoy New Hampshire, it being my home track. Those are my mile-and-a-half format for myself is up there. I expect to do finish well. On the bad note, as far as the tracks I do not like, that I do need to spend some time and a lot of testing on, would be Martinsville, Bristol. Short track racing hasn't always been my forte.
I got you. Yeah.
Subject to change,
right?
If you will.
And that's one thing. That's one thing too with the the new teams, and obviously us working together. You never know. Like, you could have a team member on your team that's good at short tracks. So I think with the new team lineups that we have, and just bringing in so many drivers, I think John. I'm going to do his interview sometime later this week, so it'll be featured on this playlist as well. The owner of the league, he's talked about bringing in a lot of more drivers, so just new perspectives. And if you end up working with certain people, obviously they can help you out with obviously Martinsville being one of my better tracks is something I'm definitely gonna help you out, and vice versa. I struggle at like New Hampshire or whatever. So with that being said, with your best and worst tracks, where do you expect to where are you looking at grabbing your first win in season 2?
In season 2, I would have to say in Cup. There's a lot of good tracks on the first quarter of the season, and there's a lot of strong ones there that I'm pretty good at. It's a whole new ball game this year, new drivers. Some the same, and my take is I want to win one of the first 6 races in Cup.
Okay, gotcha. And then, what are you most excited about going into the second season? Maybe differences in the things that we're doing this year that we're not doing last year, or what are you looking most forward to going into season 2?
I'm looking forward to new drivers. I feel very good about a lot of the new drivers we have. I feel that they'll make myself a stronger person, a stronger driver. And, you may make some friends along the way, but you also might make some rivalries along the way. Ron Allard will tell you that. It's all good.
Well, you guys love each other, I know it.
Yeah. So, but no. In all seriousness, I'm looking forward to starting season 2. It's going to be a good one. Everybody ought to step back and buckle up, because everybody's going for a ride.
I agree. And then I got 2 more questions left for you, Chris. So,
yes, sir.
With bringing on, we ran Precision. And those of you that are listening that don't know, we ran a racing league a couple years back on PlayStation 3, and Chris and I were kind of the head of that. And we're actually bringing a lot of those guys through the first season, and now the second season even more so, bringing a lot of the guys that we used to race with back into the fold and racing with us in this new league that John owns. And what are your thoughts on who's your biggest competitor, your biggest threat, you would say, week in and week out, someone you go to each track and you feel like that's someone that's going to have a chance to win the race this weekend?
Tom Lester. Tom Lester is a very strong competitor. Obviously, he won the Cup championship.
Right.
Very smart on fuel. You kind of have to, pick his mind through his driving, because you can always, you're always keeping your eye out on that driver that you want to beat, and he's definitely up there.
I'd have to agree, Chris.
That's who I'm going after.
I'd have to agree, Chris. Looking at the historically, even back on NASCAR 15 for the PlayStation 3, we seemed like every other week Tom would do something to save fuel, and I've never met anybody better at saving fuel, and one of the more well-rounded drivers. Everybody, myself included and yourself included, obviously we went over your best and worst tracks. Tom's one of those guys, week in and week out, you go to a track and you put him up there in the top 3 or 4 as having a chance to win the race.
Absolutely.
Definitely going to have our work cut out for us trying to win the Cup championship against him, and I would definitely venture to say he's going to be better in Xfinity and trucks this year than he was last year. So,
yeah.
Definitely, and just a really down-to-earth guy too. One of the better competitors we've had in the league, and a good friend on the side. Absolutely. As well. So, All right, Chris, my last question for you, and this is the most important one, I feel like. What defines a successful season for the number 12 Menards team and Cup and obviously your other sub cars that you'll be driving in Xfinity and trucks? But what defines a successful season for Chris Matakanski?
Minimizing mistakes.
Okay.
Whether it's pit road or the ice skating rink down below that white line called the apron.
Right. Now, Chris,
That's my goal.
We bring up mistakes, Chris, and I tell you, if we had a trophy for it, I feel like you'd win it every year, just like Chase Elliott's going to win this most popular driver. Let's talk about those restarts, Chris. What are we looking to work on with restarts? What's been your biggest struggle with restarts that you feel like has kind of plagued you in the past?
Well, I mean, granted, the drivers with steering wheels obviously have a huge edge on restarts.
Right.
Don't know whatever style they have or whatever wheel that they have, but with a controller, it's a whole nother beast. That's something that I'll be working on before the season 2 starts.
Right.
And just plug away and keep practicing. That's all I can do, and hopefully it picks up a little bit.
That's one thing you bring up too, Chris. And for those of you that have just started following us or don't know this either, there's a difference. There's a kind of a split down the middle between drivers that use full-on steering wheels to control their cars on the PS4 for NASCAR Heat 3, and then Chris and I, since the beginning, we've used controllers. And there's a difference there. There's obviously a little more car stability and control with the wheels, but Chris and I and those that use controllers have kind of prided ourselves on being able to keep up with those guys that use wheels. So we've never really put the investment in there for steering wheels. But yeah, with the shifting, it's definitely different. Hopefully, we'll see this year if they let you change the buttons you use for shifting, because I know I wasn't too keen on the placement on the controller that you have to use, the buttons you have to use for that.
Yeah.
But all things considered, Chris, these are all the questions I have for you. I'm gonna leave you with some final thoughts. I definitely appreciate you being obviously you were my first choice to interview for this little mini series we'll feature on the YouTube page. It's going to be a good season. It's going to be different not being on the same team, but, the Ryan Blaney, Chase Elliott relationship that we're going to kind of replicate is obviously fits into what we're trying to do. I look forward to we got a little less than 2 weeks left, I think, till the game comes out. So look forward to it, and think
Me too.
it'll be a good season. And those of you that have been listening, and we'll have a whole list of drivers over the next 2 weeks that we'll be interviewing, and Chris is just the first. And Chris, you got any final thoughts you want to leave with the listeners out there?
Just that I welcome everybody to season 2. I hope everybody enjoys it. It's going to be fun-filled, packed with awards and prizes and whatnot, and looking forward to racing side by side with each and every one of you.
All right, Chris. Those of you that have been listening, we appreciate your listening. Go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe on the channel. We'll also upload this to the Facebook page. If you're interested in racing, contact John Flaming. He's the owner. I will have him within the next couple days on the page here on the channel. I'll have his interview, and we'll talk about obviously more owner side of things. Chris, we appreciate you showing up today and giving us your thoughts and your perspective on the league, and look forward to it.
Me.
Yes, sir.